Okay, here we go. So this is video 2, but actually the tutorial 1, really, because I didn't show anything in the first video. So here we go. I'm gonna start out by making the splash screen. Okay, so we'll right click, see here's room, create room. And I used to make a separate room for the splash, but I just make a separate controller, which is an object controller. Okay, so let's go settings, the settings tab there, and we'll call it room game. We'll keep the width and height the same. This is for Windows, so speed will be at 60. Background, and I just changed it to black for the hell of it. I'll have backgrounds, but okay. And then click the check mark. Under objects, create object. Object. We'll call this splash. Oops. Splash control. Okay. So we got our splash control. We got our game. Now we'll open up the game again. Under settings, we got this creation code. Once the game starts, this is going to be the first room, so, and the only room really, but you can have multiple rooms if you wanted to. Once it loads up, this will be created when that room is created. And I'll say instance create. And it doesn't matter with the X and Y, that's just the X and Y coordinates that you're going to be putting this object. It doesn't matter because it's not really a sprite, it's just a controller. Object, and it pops up for you, so you can just bam. And you don't have to add that. I just add it because I'm an old time programmer. And we'll call that good. And we could run it. And there you go. There's your game. Doesn't do shit. Okay. So close that out. Okay, now I'm going to add the backgrounds. I'm going to create... The first background is going to be that star field. Oops. Let's open that up and call it background stars. Okay, and that's all ready to go. And I'm going to add a second background, which technically isn't really a background, but I use it with the background. Load background frame. So that's going to be actually more of a foreground, if anything. Background frame. And it's important to name your stuff so you know what's going on, because games get kind of busy and big, and you want to know what does what. So when you're testing your game, you know, you can figure out exactly where that stuff is. Okay, so I'll open up my game room again. I'll go to backgrounds, and now background 0, that's going to be my stars. That's completely at the very back of the game. And I'm going to tell it, so you can scroll down here, I'm going to have it go horizontal speed -1. So it'll scroll to the left. Now background 7, I'm going to say background frame, and I'm going to say foreground image, so it'll be above everything. You don't have to do anything, it's not going to scroll or nothing like that. And I put it at background 7 mainly because I don't know if I'm going to add anything else in here later on, which I don't, but I always like to put it at background 7. So if we run that, there you go. It's doing something. That's pretty cool. It's not quite a game, but back in the old days, it would take a lot of programming to make that happen. Okay, so in splash control, actually let's do this. Sprites, right click on sprites, create sprite, load sprite, and let's add the logo. And so we'll call it SPR underscore logo, and I'm going to center it, which what that means is your X and Y coordinates on this object or on the sprite is dead center. So you could put it at 0 on the Y or the X. And what there, see, now it's at the top, but I want it centered, so it's just fast and easy to shoot it up there. And I'm not going to make this into an object. It's going to be drawn on, because it really doesn't interact with anything. So I'll add an event, draw, and draw. Control, see that? You got your move, main 1, main 2, and control. Control is where this code right here, script you can write. Which is different than scripts. Scripts you call to. It's kind of like functions. And I'm going to say draw sprite. And draw sprite is a function within that you call to in Gamemaker. Okay, so I'm going to say, if you notice down here it says draw sprite. I'm not sure if you can see it in the video, but it wants the sprite, the sub image, the X, and the Y. The sub image is if you had like a sprite sheet, so you'd have animation or something like that, or calling to a different image from that sprite. Okay, so I'm going to say sprite logo, and I want the image is 0 because there's only one in there. Everything starts at 0 in computering. That's sounds stupid, but and I'm going to go room width divided by 2, and so the width, it'll be centered horizontally, and then I'm going to go room height divided by 2, and so it'll be centered directly onto the screen. I should probably make that bigger, see? Okay, and let's give that a try. And there you are. There's your splash screen. You could keep it as simple as this too. And it's more for, say, if you wanted to start your little game company or something like that. Now, but what I'm going to do here, I want to change stuff. I want everything to fade in. So let's do that again. Add event, create, and then once again control code. I'm going to say background. Is that what I want? Background alpha. And then I'm going to put in these brackets 0, because that's going to be that first in the room. If you look under backgrounds, background 0. That's what it means, which was the stars. I'm going to set that one to 0. I'm going to have these fade in. And then I'm going to create a variable. Let's see, logo. Let's do logo alpha equals 0. Okay, so that's in the create. So once this object, the splash control object, is created, it created that variable, and it told the background to be completely invisible, opaque. Okay, now in the draw, I'm going to do something a little bit, no, not draw. First, let's add event, step, right click there, and let me show you this too. 1, 2, 3. If you do the 3 slashes, you can tell it what it does, and it's very important to pay attention to what's what's going on. Like I said, the games get big. Let's call this fade in. So if you click the check mark, see now it says fade in, so you know what that code does. I'm going to say if background alpha 0 is smaller than 1, then a lot of times I'll just paste the stuff. Copy. Background alpha 0 plus equals 0.05. I think that's what I'm going to use. Now what I'm going to do here, so once that's finished becoming 1, full opaque, full, so you can see it, it's got full alpha. If background alpha 0 equals 1, oops, then we'll say if what do I call it? I can't remember what I called it. Logo alpha. If logo alpha is smaller than 1, then logo alpha plus equals let's do that one a little slower, 0.01. Because it's running at 60 frames a second. So that's what we're running off. And I'm going to add an else just in case. I already know that it'll become 1, but I'm going to add it. So if it's at 1, then just to make sure it's at 1, you say logo alpha equals 1. And you probably don't need to add that if you don't want to, because it's obviously at 1. So that should fade in, which I haven't added the code for the logo alpha yet, but it should fade in the background. So, but I'm going to add that here in the draw, and I'm going to call this draw logo. Okay. Now I'm going to change this from draw sprite to draw sprite extended ext, which uses the same stuff that you got there, but if you, let's lower it again. If you look down here, it's got X scale, Y scale, rotation, color, and alpha, which is the only thing we're concerned about really. So you can screw with this X scales and Y scale and the rotation, all of them, as it's fading in. But I'm going to go ahead and say 1. That's the scale. That's the initial scale of it. Rotation 0, which means it's not rotating. Now color, C white. C white means you're not adding any colors to it. It just is what it is. So you got all these other colors, but I just want it to be its own color. And then alpha we will call what would I call it? Wait, I think I copied it. Logo alpha. Okay, let's try that. Ooh, nice. Let's try it again. You probably just barely see the background. The background does fade in, but just barely. You can change those numbers if you want. But we're getting to the 15-minute mark, so I think I'm going to call that good for this one. It's kind of cool. And like I said, you could do fancy stuff with that. You can make other variables for, say, the X scale, Y scale, so it could zoom in at you or something like that, which would be cool. The more you get into this stuff, the more it becomes fun. Programming is fun, and I recommend it for all smart little kids. Alright, I think I'm going to call that good for this one, and I'm going to try and make as many as I can, as often as I can. I still have to work my job, so. Alright, so subscribe. I know it's not that exciting at this point, but the more you subscribe, the more I'm more energized to do this stuff. And you can even say what you didn't like, if I move too fast, or if I'm retarded, or whatever you want to do. Alright, I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.